I don't know how a month has already passed, but we're here to do an update for January and what I read this month. If this is the first time you're seeing my face, I am currently trying to read 241 unread books. That number is gonna fluctuate because, again, I didn't think through the fact that I will be acquiring books as well, so we're just gonna call it a 241 challenge because that's what I've been calling it, regardless of how many books I actually have acquired and changed during that period. But I started with 241 books, and so I'm trying to read as many of them as possible this year because that is just entirely too many unread books to own. I worked it out that when I initially did the math of how many books I would have to read, how quickly I would have to read them in order to achieve this challenge in the timeline that I have in my mind, and it worked out to about a book a day, which when I say it out loud sounds ridiculous. Who's reading a book a day? Not me. Not me with my full 9-to-5 job. But I did end up reading 21 books this month, which is more than I honestly thought I was gonna get to. I thought like maybe 15, because the most I've read in a month in recent years has been like 11, and that's when I was reading strictly like Bridgerton books. So I'm gonna consider that a win. A win is a win. I'm not gonna go through the books that I have read this month because I'm doing wrap-ups by 5 books. So every 5 books I read, I do a wrap-up on those 5 books. There's some on my channel already. I'm just gonna be here to give some stats about where I am, how this is going, what have I acquired, what am I unhauling this month. So we started the month with 241 books. I acquired one book for work, and that is Venko by Cherie Dimaline. It is coming out in February, and it was one of my anticipated books of the year. I'm reading it for work, or I read it for work at this point. I've decided I'm only acquiring books for work, or if someone gifts me a book. Those are the only 2 ways I'm allowed to get a book into my library, or if is the only way I can get a book for book club for House Salt. If I can't get it on e-reader, if I can't get it in audio, and I have to pick up the physical book, those are the only 3 ways I'm allowed to do it. That brought me up to 242 unread books, but then in a way that sort of balances things out, not done in order to balance things out, I did unhaul a book that I just was not planning to read, and that was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I've had it since it first came out, but it just isn't in the cards for me. There are too many trigger warnings for that book that I know will put me in a bad place, and so I just decided, you know what, for my own health, I'll just not read that. I don't need to. I don't feel the need to read that book or the sequel, even though that one's out and everyone's talking about it. I'm fine with missing out. I'm fine with missing out on that. So I peacefully departed with that book. I gave it to a friend, and that brought me back down to 241 unread books. And then I read 21 this month. So now we are at 220 unread books as of me filming this. Of the 21 books that I read this month, 9 of them were above a 3-star, which I guess that's just like it's just maths really when you think about it, because I read so many books. Of course I read a lot more 4 stars than I normally would read in a month. Conversely, 7 of them were below 3 stars. So again, I just think it's because of the numbers that I'm reading why I'm getting so many of these like highs and lows. But not really a lot of mid books, which honestly I think it's the mid books that really put a damper on things for me, because it's just meh when you're reading and then you don't feel like reading. At least when I'm like not enjoying a book, I'm having strong thoughts about not enjoying that book. Of all the books that I read, 14 of them were romances, 3 were memoirs, 2 were topical nonfiction, 1 was a lit fic book, and 1 was a YA fantasy. So my highest rated book of the month was The Sweetest Remedy by Jane Igharo. I did a whole video on Jane's books, which you can watch up here. I'm gonna link it, and I just thought it was honestly the best of the romances that I read this month for sure. It just was fun. It had the perfect amount of romance and other subplots. And then my lowest books were tied, and I also did a rant video about them. I think that one's upcoming. I don't think I've posted it yet, but The Most Eligible Bride in London and Notorious were tied for lowest rated. But if I had to tell you which one I personally in my esteem was the lower one, it was The Most Eligible Bride in London. Honestly, I cannot stress enough how nothing of a book that was for me. I read 21 books for the 241, but I also read Nevermore, so I actually read 22 books for the month of January. I don't know if I'm gonna get any higher than that amount of books ever. I think that's just gonna probably be the standard going forward, unless I get like a really poetry heavy month coming up soon. But there's so many like big books as well. I need to figure out, there's too much math involved in like how I'm supposed to be reading these books. I just go by vibes right now. But that is where we are right now in February. 220 unread books. Less now because I have been reading since February started, but you'll have to come back for that update. I'll see you guys next week with my next 5-book wrap-up, and then I will be doing some stuff about Romance Book Club coming up. This is the best challenge for me because it's actually a wealth for content. You guys should let me know if you see anything on these shelves behind me, what I should pick up next. What is a book that would get me out of a slump if I end up in a slump? And I'll see you guys in my next video.